The little villages of Bethpage and Bethany, they live on this annual cycle of life. But there is a cycle that needs broken. And Jesus knows it's time to do it. So he sends 2 unnamed disciples into one of these 2 villages to requisition a donkey, colt, for a ride into Jerusalem. And this gets his followers so excited because it's an ancient tradition. Only a king is worthy of such an honor. I know we have difficulty imagining a lowly donkey as transport for a king. We probably think it should be, a white stallion or a Humvee or something, Oh, how exciting this day is going to be. Just imagine how the crowds will rise up as we approach Jerusalem, and the throngs will demand that Jesus be crowned their king. Herod will flee, the legions will slink back to Rome in defeat. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, we've got to get the colt. Jesus said, if anyone asks you, why are you untying it? Just say this, the Lord needs them. Now, in the language of the day, the Lord needs them is a royal or sometimes military saying. It was a way for the government to show up and take from you whatever they wanted. Kind of like April 15th. However, these guys weren't in uniform or wearing the fine clothes of a king's court. I have difficulty believing that the owner of the colt simply lets the disciples take it. I mean, 2 guys, simply dressed, show up at your house and say they need your brand new pickup truck because the Lord needs it? And you're just going to hand over the keys? I don't think so. But the gospel writer doesn't get bogged down with all of that. The owner says, okay. The disciples toss their cloaks on it, boost Jesus into the driver's seat, and start cheering. See, they go out ahead of Jesus to get people's attention. And this cheering starts on the descent from the Mount of Olives. So kind of like a parade. You know how you hear it far away and then, good old Doppler effect? The people begin to drift in from wherever they are. The fields, their homes, their shops. And passersby get swept up in all of this commotion. What do you imagine Jesus was thinking of all this adulation? He may have recalled the prophet Zechariah, who wrote, "Shout and cheer, daughter Zion, your king is coming, a good king who makes all things right, a humble king riding a mere colt of a donkey." And then recalling the cruel irony that Zechariah was killed right in the temple. And this cheering goes on and growing louder and bolder as the crowds increase, the closer they get to Jerusalem, the city that's filling up with the pilgrims for Passover. And amongst all this commotion and the sounds and all this motion and activity, Jesus weeps tears of such sadness because he knows these people just don't get it. Jesus riding into town like a triumphant king would, soaking in the adulation, lets tears stream down his cheeks because he knows this is not the demonstration of a people's change of heart. And especially his disciples are guilty of a misplaced giddiness, because it's as though they have misunderstood the last 3 years. Less than 30 years from this point, the Roman army, intent on stamping out the flames of Jewish passion for freedom, will tear down Jerusalem stone by stone, and sending the survivors into their final exile. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Jesus spends a busy week trying to get people to get it. He throws the profiteers out of the temple. He continued to debate and infuriate the Pharisees and the Sadducees. He continued to teach lessons of stewardship and the proper role of money in our lives. He warned of the turmoil to come and the cost true believers would pay for living according to his teachings. He shared his last Passover meal with his closest disciples on that fateful night of his arrest. And he tried to get them to understand one last time what he had been preparing them for. Jesus spends this holiday week, when everyone else is preparing their Passover parties. Let's admit it, it's no different than our Easter dinners. It's a party. Jesus spends this week trying to convince folks to alter their way of living, continuing to teach that compassion and love are greater powers than kingships or military might, continuing to reassure that there is healing for the mind and restoration for the soul when we become willing servants to God's creation. So where are we in this Palm Sunday story? Are we the crowd, being swept along in the euphoria of shooting rubber bands at the teacher? Are we the disciples that get the donkey? Are we the nervous Pharisees that want to quiet the crowd? Are we those that sit in judgment of Jesus, demanding proof of every miracle he performed? Or are we the donkey's owner, feeling resentment towards this Jesus? How many times do we hear Jesus say, "Hey, can you give me a ride?" And we give a litany of excuses why we can't. We tell Jesus to call Uber. How many times do we hear Jesus say, "You know those clothes that you don't wear anymore? They'd be really useful to somebody else. Where are you donating them?" Or when Jesus says, "You know, some of that stuff in your garage would be really helpful at Habitat for Humanity's Restore. Can I borrow your pickup truck?" And we say, "But I'm having my own garage sale." How many times do we hear Jesus say, "Can you give me a ride to the nursing home? We just need to sit and listen to somebody." Jesus says, there's this old warehouse at the Ravenna Arsenal. And they collect all kinds of clothes and furniture and medical supplies, and then they get shipped out to the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota and for the children of Guatemala. It's called the Mission of Love. I need you to take a bunch of high school kids over there to help out. Or we say, but there's no restrooms or electricity in that building. Or where we say, I'd love to drive. Jesus says, there's enough hate in this world. Will you help welcome refugees? Jim Lawrence gave Jesus a ride every chance he got. And even this past Monday, Jim in his hospital bed was concerned that he might not be able to make it on Tuesday to help unload the truck for the pantry. He said that. Jesus would like a ride. And he would love for you to take him wherever you are going. Perhaps even to places you've never been before. Or am I getting ahead of myself? Amen.